I'm Veronica Green, and I'm an early childhood consultant who specializes in loose parts and sensory processing, and I support my fellow educators through online professional development that is inspiring, practical, and that provides new insights and perspectives that you can directly put into your practice and to become more confident within your role from all aspects. So today we're going to be looking at some art and sensory play ideas that you can use during this time of COVID-19. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to show you guys some examples of what you guys can potentially do during all of this time as well, okay? Okay, so what you're going to learn, we're going to go over some misconceptions about sensory play and talk about some of the truths around that within sensory play and art ideas. We'll definitely start to look at what we can use, as well as going into more ideas within trade play or new creative art ideas that you can use within your settings right now. And then lastly, we will look at some wonderful fellow educators of who you can follow for some inspiration. So before we begin, as you are watching this video, many educators are located all over the world. So there are many different kinds of rules and regulations that have been put in place during this time with the COVID-19 virus. So while you're listening to this video, what I hope that you do is that you consider two things. If you're listening to an idea that I'm providing and you feel like it's just not going to work, I ask you to ask yourself these two questions. What can I learn from this, and how can I apply it to my setting and practice? So how can you adapt it? Can you just change up the materials? Could you do it a little bit differently? Just so that we're in the right mindset before we go forward. Okay, so there are a lot of misconceptions about what is sensory play. So first of all, there's a lot of misconceptions that sensory experiences only happen in our sensory tables, and that sensory experiences only involve our hands. This is far from the truth. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. And the last misconception is that art experiences typically only involve common mediums such as like paint, clay, or Play-Doh. And with all of the rules and regulations, a lot of the time we're not able to use those right now, especially in group settings. So we're going to see some other new mediums that we can explore to create a art and creative experience for children. Okay, so truth. Every experience is a sensory experience that involve all of our 8 senses through all aspects of our program. So from the children coming into our spaces, there is a visual sensory experience happening with what's on the walls, the materials that they're seeing. There is a tactile experience with all the different textures, with the different materials that they're exploring with. There is the auditory sense being engaged through the kinds of music that you might have, or the conversations that they're hearing, or the humming from the lights or the fans or anything like that. So everything that we do is a sensory experience, and it's not just what happens in our sensory bins or not just with our hands. It involves our entire bodies. Another truth is that this is an opportunity for us to look for new mediums to make art or be creative with. And I'll give you a couple examples of those. Okay, so what can we use? That is a big question right now. So we just want to change our mindset, because sometimes we can get focused on what we can't use and we might miss some of those amazing materials that we are just wanting to be able to use in our programs, and we can't anymore right now. So What can we use? We need to find things that can be easily disinfected, sanitized, cleaned, in between uses, or at the end of the day, depending on how you're doing it. So when it comes to loose parts, because that's what I specialize in, I definitely wanted to focus on some of the variables that we can use that are easily cleaned. So that would be like mirrors, whether those are glass or acrylic. That can definitely be used right now. Anything that's metal, plastic, all of those things can be easily sanitized in between use and at the end of the day as well. Natural items like sticks and leaves and mud, all of that can just be put back outside when you're engaging with it. Next would be like lights. A lot of lights like flashlights or little candle lights, a lot of those items are plastic and so they can't be disinfected. And then magnets, a lot of magnets are usually plastic or metal, so those items can be disinfected as well. So there's tons of other things within that, right? Because plastic is just a very general thing. So there are lots of items that you can use within that category too. So we just want to change our mindset and focus on what we can use instead of what we can't. Okay, so I definitely wanted to make sure that I provided some examples of things that you can use right now that would provide a very engaging sensory experience. So we've learned that sensory experiences are not just happen within our sensory bins, or that it's not just with our hands, it can be with our entire bodies, right? So we're engaging the visual, auditory, smell, touch, and then like movements as well within our proprioceptive sense and our vestibular sense. So those are big words. I've talked about them before. Proprioceptive is like weights and the impact that we feel in our muscles and joints, whereas vestibular is more about feeling safe within our bodies and having that gravitational security so that you can move about. Sometimes it can be like lots of kids like to spin or rock, so it's just kind of engaging that sense with that. So these items here you could all use during this experience, during this time right now with COVID-19, can all be disinfected really easily and create a wonderful sensory experience. So these items would be stuff that we have out in our programs all the time. It's not just in our sensory bin. So we're creating that sensory experience for them just naturally in their play. So for example, napkin ring holders. They come in all different shapes, sizes, colors, materials, textures, and a lot of the time they can be easily sanitized. Different kinds of like rocks that you might find at the dollar store or outside, they can all be cleaned and sanitized. You see the metal reflective sensory balls. Those are metal, they're not glass, so they're actually designed for infants. So they are wonderful to use. They provide an amazing sensory experience for children. You'll see like that black kind of sparkly thing in the background, that's a placemat. So you can easily disinfect that. It's just got some shiny stuff to it. So all of those items are easily used and disinfected. In the other picture here, you see that there's on the top right, there's like the translucent cups on top of acrylic mirror. So I was talking about how we could use mirrors right now because those are easily sanitized in between use, at the end of the day, all that kind of stuff. So those acrylic mirrors I got from IKEA in the kids section, and I just taped them down onto a table. And then the translucent cups provide colors, and you can stack and build, and they can do all sorts of things with them. And again, be easily sanitized, and they're providing a wonderful sensory experience for the children. On the bottom part of this picture here, there is examples of these beautiful plastic bowls, colorful bowls that I picked up from Dollarama. So they comes in different sizes, different shapes, and then there's also jars that have like colored water inside of them, which would provide a little bit of weight depending on the child that's using them, if that's heavy enough for them. So that's engaging all of our different senses as well. So it's not just about what's in the sensory bins. The materials that we provide in our programs engage our senses all the time. So Which loose parts require no cleaning? So I really want to focus on this because this is what's really helpful for us right now, because it just kind of takes away the whole, how am I going to clean it? Well, right now, you can use mud, plants, animals, words, concepts, ideas, or movement. All of these are variables listed within the theory of loose parts from Simon Nicholson. So he really likes to go beyond just the physical materials that we play with. There tends to be a lot of focus on that, and there's so much more to loose parts play than just those physical materials. So seeing how we can engage children in movement and a sensory experience, and it also would be really creative. Like a simple thing would be them playing outside on a hill and rolling down a hill. That is a major sensory experience. They're engaging their vestibular sense and their proprioceptive sense while playing with the idea of movement within loose parts play. So, and there's no cleaning required for that. So it's a pretty easy one to do. Okay, so let's just start thinking about some of the other variables that we can combine with the sensory experience too. So then I wanted to give you guys some ideas of what you can do. So for some of these more messy play experiences that we might be having within our sensory bins or outside that typically are like more group play, but we can't do right now because of the contamination of children touching all the same things and stuff. We just can't keep it sanitary. So one idea that I have seen lots of other people do, and I've done my practice long before this, was this idea of like tray play. So this is where you're creating individual trays, and you could create messy experiences. You could have more loose parts for them to be creative and explore and engage their senses and creativity as well. So tray play just kind of keeps it more individualized. So that way they can still play with certain materials that you don't want them to engage with in a group aspect. So this example here on the screen, this one is just simple. It's baking soda with food coloring, and then the other plastic container has vinegar, and then they use pipettes. So, you know, it creates it like bubble and overflow. It's a really common experience that they like to engage with. But you're creating it in a more individual space, so that way, because the kids are going to want to touch it, and you can't do that with groups right now, so at least this way you can still have that experience for them, but in an individual aspect as well. Okay. And this is actually connected to loose parts play because Simon Nicholson talks a lot about chemical reactions within loose parts play as well, and that's what this is. It's a simple chemical reaction with the baking soda and vinegar. So another example of tray play is, and this has been commonly being done right now, but I just wanted to bring it to your attention just in case, is the idea of doing Play-Doh on individual trays. So I like to take things up a notch though and not just have Play-Doh. So again, those acrylic mirrors, I put an acrylic mirror on a tray I use homemade Play-Doh, so that if a children wants to taste it, because some children still have that oral need, so that way it's safe to do so. There's some natural pieces in there that can just be tossed back out into nature, sticks and leaves. And then there's some other loose parts like glass stones that can be sanitized as well. So this was an experience that I did with my son a couple summers ago, and it was more on the tray just to contain the mess because we were at my parents' house. So otherwise at home I'm fine with Play-Doh getting everywhere, but it did help just contain a little bit more, and it's a great idea about how do you engage all of those senses while still creating a very creative experience for children as well. So another tray idea I wanted to give you is these are little makeup pads that I have that I bought packages and packages of them from Costco, and so you could just put them on a cookie tray, and then you can use little containers with colored water and pipettes, and they can mix colors. And if you have other plastic trays, this is actually that plastic tray that you see there, there's two there. The larger one is like a fruit tray that I saved and cleaned, so again it can be easily sanitized, and the smaller one with the little circles, that's like from a box of quiche that I bought from Costco. It's little individual quiches in there. I just saved them and cleaned it. And so I was able to do that. So you just need to find individual containers. Like good ones would be jar lids, because they're really small. You can control how much water's in them, and you can easily collect them, and then you'd be able to have enough for multiple trays for children as well. And having pipettes or even straws might work if they were to use their hands. So yeah, so that way you can still create like a sensory kind of creative experience with water and food coloring, which a lot of the time isn't supposed to be used right now in group settings, but you could do it in a very individual, controlled manner, because it's such a small amount of water with this. Okay, so I also wanted to give you a few new art experiences of what you might have to do with a variety of ages. So this one is doing a color collecting collaborative project. And I got this idea out of the book Conscious Creativity, and I've mentioned that book many times before. So this is actually an idea that the author suggested for adults to figure out their own creativity again. And so basically you could just have children take photographs of items inside and outside of specific colors, and then you can create like an art installation on the wall of their findings. And then you could also if possible, use the physical items collected in the project as well. So say you find, if you found blue flowers, you might actually want to take some of those blue flowers home or back with you to your setting, and then you could somehow use them in the documentation process on the wall as well next to the picture. So it just kind of creates that interesting aspect, as if you wanted to go that route. But it could create a really beautiful art installation on your wall. The children get to explore the idea of photography, which is part of the art world, and they get to explore a new medium. They would get to see all the different ranges and hues and tones of blues or reds or anything, and it would, I think it'd be a pretty magical experience for children, and they would be so directly involved in it. And there's not a lot of cleaning or anything like that to do. It would just be getting the photos and printing them and the installation of it. Okay, so that's one new way of having an art experience, and the more we're outside, the better right now with children. You could even have them take pictures. If not all of your children are back yet, you could have them take pictures of that specific color from home, and parents could email the pictures in so that you could still have that connection from children at home and children in the programs if not everybody's back yet. Okay, so that's one idea. Another idea is this one I thought would be great for younger children. So tree branch wrapping. And this photo is courtesy of one of my dear colleagues, Alana Chernecki. And so she does what is it called? Artful Teaching Joyful Learning. So I just want to make sure I had that right. So it's just tree branch wrapping. It's fairly simple. You could create individual trays, baskets, whatever you're going to do, of string, yarn, fabrics, ribbon, anything like that, in individual trays or containers for the children. You collect tree branches and then they just wrap it. You could turn it into a mobile. You can turn it into they're like in a plant pot, and it creates decor in their room. So there's multiple different ways, and it would be a great experience for the younger children as well. And it's very, very sensory. So they're holding that tree branch, they're feeling the nature, they're feeling the textures from the different strings and fabrics and ribbons and everything. And then the wrapping it around is the skill that they're working on, but it's also very much like visual tracking, and they're engaging their vestibular sense because they're having to do the wrapping around. So it's combining sensory and art all together, and this is such a simple thing to be able to do with young children. So the last experience I wanted to share with you is doing wire sculptures. So wire is very easily sanitized. You can wipe it down if you need to after use. And it allows you to create 3D sculptures right now, because if you are not allowed to use clay or Play-Doh or anything like that, and that's where a lot of children get to create that 3D experience, wire is a great alternative to that. Although I think that wire should be an art medium used quite often. If you wanted to use it with younger children, then you'd have to figure out the safety aspects with that, because it can be a little pokey and sharp. I think it depends on kind of the wires that you find and what you could do with it. But I would say probably for older children, engaging with wire, and you could add like nuts and bolts, as you can see in this picture here, so they can just manipulate the wire and add different loose parts to it that all can be easily sanitized after when they're done with it. So it's another great way that can be done individually. You could space children out so it's still a group experience with the distance, but then they're just engaging with the materials that they have. So I wanted to share that one with you because it's another wonderful way to get the 3D experience without using the clay and the Play-Doh right now, if you were not able to do that. But you can still do that individually. It just depends how strict your rules and regulations are. Okay, so in summary, sensory experiences occur everywhere in our settings, and I hope that you're seeing that now with the kinds of materials that we provide, how you set them up, when you go outside. All of that is a sensory experience, just rolling down the hill is. And so we also need to make sure that we have a mindset of what we can use, and I hope I've given you some new ideas of what you can use in your programs to create these art and sensory experiences. And then we want to look for new ways or mediums to engage in art creative experiences. So right now I give you the ideas of photography, maybe introducing wire, so that we don't have to even worry about too much sanitization or cleaning involved with it. And yet we're still engaging children in very creative experiences that you can do individually and in a group aspect as well. Because that's what we still want. We still want to make sure that we're creating really social, engaging, and thoughtful, intentional experiences for children. So lastly, who to follow for inspiration. Now, I follow all three of these people. The first one is Creation Space. You can find them on Facebook and Instagram. She has an amazing sensory creative play studio in Edmonton, and it is her program is absolutely amazing, and I take a lot of inspiration from her. I've learned from her so many different ways, so I highly recommend to follow her. Another great example is Kinderoo Children's Academy. You can find them on Facebook and Instagram as well. They understand how to create sensory and creative, engaging experiences beyond the typical ways. So if you are looking for some really new, innovative, out-of-the-box ideas, definitely check them out as well. And the last one that I learned about is Think Create with Savonia. And you can find her on Instagram, and her profile is beautifully engaging and lots of inspirational ideas is there as well for you. So make sure you check all three of those out. Okay, so I guess if you would like to learn more, I do have lots of other resources on the website. If you are not a subscriber to my newsletter, you definitely should join. It's called All Things Early Years, and it's basically like a professional development library now. There's probably I think there's about 10 or 12 different newsletters in there on lots of different topics, and you hear from your fellow educators. They share stories from their practice. It's just wonderful. You find lots more blog posts and video blogs on this blog. There's a whole series on loose parts. There's more on sensory processing. So you can just search around and check it out. I also have the Educator Library on my website. So there's lots of different books that I recommend for your own learning, books to bring in for children, and lots of other videos and articles. And so there is a topic of sensory processing, and there is a topic there for process art as well. And then I also do have online workshops if you're looking for any professional learning opportunities right now. And with my online workshops, you get unlimited access, unlimited viewing. You do get a certificate of completion as well after the workshops, and they are very inspiring and practical, and you can read lots of other reviews of what other educators enjoy on that page too. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Leave some comments down below on the blog, and I'll see you guys next time.